Look who's back! If you were wondering about my ranger, don't worry, I haven't forgot about him. If anything, I'm really interested in comparing the ranger and the paladin. In my last episode, I commented that the paladin was feeling stronger, but I had a strong suspicion that it was because of a better itemized newbie armor. Then I learned of the cold and valiant weapons, which are strictly upgrades over my ranger weapons. So I went all the way to the city of Tergadrin and got myself 2 cold and valiant scimitars. Previously, I had said that I felt much safer as the paladin. Well, that sentiment is now under contest. I introduce you to root and shoot. I skip in time a little bit here, but I went from level 19 to 20 solely by rooting gnolls and shooting them to death. The method revealed to be extremely effective. I have a really good range damage. Did you know that rangers can critical hit with bows past level 17? And it was safe, sometimes defeating the enemies without taking damage. But it has a really big disadvantage. It is expensive. You see, I want to skill up my fletching, so I was crafting my own arrows, and going from 19 to 20 cost me around 100 plat. But from 20 to 21, I put the new swords to work, and oh, they did work indeed. The DPS was higher and they were broken nicely. The ranger has 90 dex after all, and I could take on 2 gnolls in quick succession in most cases. Having better weapons was really doing wonders, and show how having good gear can affect your enjoyment of the game. Ranger was back on the menu, baby, but first, let's have a look at the paladin. The first thing I did upon returning to Fedower was to make a quick stop at Crushbone and try to get the shield. And this time, I was lucky because it dropped from the very first orc I killed. Now I could advance on my journey without looking back. There is something soothing about lakes, don't you think? Well, you won't find any of this here. I may have stumbled on the worst zone of the game. Holy crap. The area around the lake is pitiful, and the enemies don't stay on it. Instead, they roam all around into the water, and you can see crap on the water. And you are slow in the water. The enemies, they are not, of course they aren't. And then there's some random goblins that are higher levels than everything else, and they go walking and swimming around and you can't see them coming. Anyway, I don't want to stay here, even with the tracker of my ranger. And there are some items that would be upgraded in the zone, but screw the zone. I'm out of here. I may have ruined my time in the Unrest by overleveling. Almost everything on the courtyard is light blue or green to me, consequently giving me poor XP. But I'm not one to waste a good journey, and see this as a good opportunity to skill up my one-handed blunt weapon skill. The undead are perfect for this, and as 10 I can summon my Hammer of Wrath, and have a .28 weapon, which is on par with the newbie weapon. Later, I tried to go inside. It was a rude awakening. I was summoned by the undead out of nowhere. At one moment, it looked like I would be able to pull something by itself, and on the next, I was being hit from all sides. Yet, indoors were all the dark blues, and the XP were. I found out I could go to the side door and pull undeads from inside, and they even seemed to not social aggro. So, they would always come by themselves. And I could even meditate on the little porch, and I wouldn't aggro enemies roaming in the courtyard. Well, for the most part, it did happen once or twice. I only had to pay attention when fighting the lurking mummies. Man, those hit like a truck, all the way up to 42 damage. I have to confess, it was kind of a dead camp, but it sweetened me fine since I was blasting through my mana, and I needed the time to meditate. But I still felt disappointed. Searching online, the zone was heavily recommended as a leveling spot for group and solo. But it didn't really feel like it. I can understand it for a group, but soloing was messy. Roamers everywhere, and even Greencall still aggroed on you. Trains were common, from me and others in the zone. I only see it as a great place if you plan to focus just on the entrance area. Still, I remained in the area until I got level 22. Next was time to get level 22 on the Ranger. And for that, I went to the Gorge of King Xorbb. And I had a very good reason to come here. I had never been here before. The Gorge is, well, a boring zone. Not bad, just okay. Actually, I got some good XP here. Minotaurs are a bit of a challenge, but totally doable. The Muddites are an excellent enemy to fight. They feel easier than the other Dark Blues, but they still give the same amount of XP. But the stars of the zone are the Evil Eyes. I fought my first Evil Eye and it was surprisingly easy, and the loot was very valuable. The logical conclusion was to fight more of them, but I was in for a surprise. The enemies can charm me. Ha! They literally made me into a pet. I couldn't even control my mouse cursor, and all the time I was worried because they were leading me further into the zone, and I couldn't do anything but hope that the spell would break. And between you and me, the fact that this can happen is amazing. It's the sort of experience that I don't usually find in the more modern MMOs. I also discovered that when you are afflicted with blindness, you really get blind, as in you can't get to see your screen anymore. Other than that, the zone is small and empty, with only a few landmarks. An obelisk with nothing around. There is the entrance to a goblin lair, but the biggest one is the altar with the 3 high-level evil eyes, including the King Xorbb. While fighting here, I had to constantly make use of the walls, pulling enemies to it to avoid the myriad of roamers in the zone. And that was the biggest issue here. But for real, at least at level 21, this was a pretty chill zone to level up and eventually get to 22. Both characters reached level 22, and that meant new spells. A perfect moment to compare both. And Kha'Zix Tool was battleground, most because I wanted to go after the pieces of the Rubicite armor, starting with the Paladin. Level 22 was a boring spell tier for him, saved by Root. That feels amazing after going 22 levels of fleeing enemies. I define the Paladin as the slow and steady class. You have defensive options to control how to engage the enemy around you. Lu is extremely useful. and probably your strongest spell. Yeah, being able to nuke an undead is cool, but it's only the undead. And it is even better to be able to dictate the terms of an encounter. And once in the encounter, your main tactic is just to outlast the enemy. Basically, a battle of attrition. Level 22 for the Ranger felt really good. Get the next tier for your healing spell and direct damage spell. Going from 15 damage burst of fire to 37 damage ignite is significant. With this new burst of damage in between your weapon swings feels impactful. Ranger actually has a lot of utilities. Snare, outdoor invisibility, root, outdoor lure, but indoors, the lack of lure makes your life harder, as you have a harder time with that which the Paladin is good at, dictating the encounter. Also, as opposed to the Paladin, as a Ranger, you want your encounter to end fast. You go in and you go hitting hard, assuming that you weren't root-rotting with your bow. That is the big difference between both. Paladin has many control options, the exception being the ability to control how fast an encounter lasts. To last your weapon DPS, no more, no less. With Ranger, I feel that I always want to push, or I am punished with a recovering time that is too long. But as a result of that, it is more common for the Paladin to be in a worse shape after a battle than a Ranger, for the battle lasts longer and consequently I take more damage. This makes me wonder about the Shadow Knight. I'm aware of his reputation for being the best at soloing, probably a combination of strong utility with defenses, but from watching others play, I would say it is that they are really good at controlling the pace of the fight, being able to spend a lot of resources quickly to speed things up or go in a slower tactic to preserve the same resources. Now I'm starting to wonder how playing a Shadow Knight feels. But one thing I know for sure, Draken is way cooler than Lay on Hands, and that is just a fact. Kashyyyk too is a place where I have to comment later in my journey, as I only got to see its entrance for now. Going for the pieces of the Ruby side is not that bad, and my Ranger was so much faster than my Paladin that in a little more than 2 hours I got all the 5 pieces of the Ruby site available at my level. Don't worry, I know that luck helped it, but it is undeniable that I was killing enemies faster and consequently more of them. 4 hours in and the Paladin still only had 4 pieces. With my new weapons, I was really in the mood to keep going with the Ranger. I guess I just got the need to try the Paladin to get it out of my system. Well, knowing that there are some good quivers that are made with tailoring, I chose to level up on the crag spiders in East Karanas. I was really noticing the difference that the better swords and a better nuke was doing to my leveling experience. I was cruising against these spiders. Okay, I confess that there were a few lapses in judgment. One should not underestimate the poison procs and its lingering effects. Other than that, the process was going surprisingly well. I discovered that staying in the back of the mountains, I wouldn't aggro any roamer, and that allowed me to meditate without being bothered. And so I killed spiders, and I got level 23. And 25. And I also got a lot of spider silk. More than 150 of them. I was thinking of doing another traveling montage, but nope. This continent is too cursed to do so. High level enemies everywhere, and some of them even consider invisibility. And the worst part is the tree model. For some reason, they made the branches going all the way down to the terrain, and as a consequence, they constantly block my vision. It was a hellish journey, and my butt was clenched the whole time. My first stop here was the alternative version of Kurn's tower. I was here for the box of Abukar. After figuring out how it worked, I headed to the second floor to kill all the skeletons there. See, there are two things to know here. Every skeleton you kill has 2% of a chance to spawn a named enemy that drops the box. The other is that the zone has a rule where you can only loot from enemies that give you experience. Because of my level, the named NPC from the first floor and the easier one would be a green cone to me. So to the second floor I went, and after some time killing enemies that gave me nothing, the named fragment of Borgian spawned. Fairly easy fight that rewarded me with the box of Abukar, a bag with 100% weight reduction that can fit giant items. The next step was in the real Kurn's tower. This time I headed straight to the basement of the tower in search of the undead jester. Because I was so overleveled for the zone, I quickly made my camp on its spawn area without having to worry about the burying eye harassing me. On the very third spawn, it was the jester wielding a club, the Xorbb club. It was pretty luck, and got my club very fast. Since I was in the area already, I took my club for a test drive against the giants in Warsleek Woods. The first thing I learned was the importance of having properly raised weapon skill. My one-handed blunt was still at 40, and the missing streaks were real. Got another death here. I was fighting a giant, and my damage just wasn't keeping up. And when running away, I couldn't see properly without the tree foliage. I went the wrong way, aggro more enemies. In sum, it was a disaster. After that, I was more careful, changing my weapon mid-battle to balance damage and skill ups. But slowly, I was earning those very valuable skill ups and witnessing just how good the Xorbb club really is. And I say this fighting a Kunark enemy, which are considered harder than the ones in the base game. And these giants definitely hit hard, up to 50 damage. To compensate for the luck to get the club, the giants were taking their time to drop the gem-encrusted ring. But one whole level later, it finally dropped. And what upgrade it was from just +2 strength to +7 strength and 10 armor class. And its effect of affliction efficiency does reduce the mana cost of my dots, snares and roots. Unfortunately, no forest loops. And seeing how their drop rate was less than 1%, I wasn't so sure about them. Yes, they were an upgrade, but were they worth the grind to get them? I'm not so sure. They seem to be more of something that if you get, you are glad that you got lucky, and if you don't manage to drop them, you just move on. And that was what I ended up doing so. Stay with the giants until level 27 and decide to move somewhere else. Still, Kunark remains very unexplored by me. Who knows? Maybe I should make an Ixar to explore it. For the next part, I will be heading back to Antonica to set fear in the heart of the animals there.